Catherine. We'd like to ask you about, as a neurologist and working in allopathic medicine, how do you describe your primary experience with the MyHealth?
Well, I have used a lot of different devices over the course of my career, and part of my responsibilities for a colleague of mine who wanted to inquire what the best devices would be if you were going to build a clinic with integrated practitioners and you wanted energetic technologies, what would be the best? And so I've encountered an awful lot of things in the context of performing that role, MyHealth being one of those. So I was introduced to the device just a little bit over a year ago, and I actually, because I'm always looking for something that's really simple, the obvious thing about it was that it's very handy. You can carry it around. You can put it in a suitcase. You can carry it anywhere. So I started using it on things that were familiar to me, like pain problems. And so my very first Medicare day, when I had the device in my possession, I just asked every patient in the room that I encountered, do you have any pain that you've had for a while? And of course, these are people who are in their 60s up to their 90s, and there wasn't a soul that didn't have a pain problem. And my experience was, I'm sitting there having a very brief Medicare visit, but I'm treating their pain with a little bit of limited knowledge that I had about how to use the device. And there was not one person who did not have, if not complete pain relief, 90% pain relief on that day. That sold me. That is all I needed, was just to have the pain. But then I started to get a little bit more experimental with it. And as a neurologist, I see lots of chronic, progressive, never going to fix problems, or things that we could just manage symptomatically. And so I have a huge population, because my original heritage at Mayo was to be a pain specialist. So I have expertise in autonomic neurology, but also in pain neurology. And so I have just tons of people who come to me for refractory pain problems of all types. But the one that really hooked me the most was taking care of people who had peripheral neuropathy, including people who also had foot drop as part of that process. So my primary motivation in the first few people that I treated with that problem was just to relieve their pain. And much to my surprise, that treatment that would hold their pain off for sometimes as long as 3 to 5 days, and remembering these are people who have pain 24/7, and medicines sedate them but maybe take the edge off the pain. So here were people that I treated who had complete pain relief and also got their strength back. That totally blew my mind, and I was thereafter, it was on my lips that this is the most amazing thing I've ever encountered, and it's just grown since then.
That's fabulous. I mean, that's just amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about when you used the device for the peripheral neuropathy? Was that on the skin or off the skin, or how did you use the device? I mean, we're all kind of curious.
Well, I've done it, this is actually part of the things. One of the things that I'm assigned to do is collect data about using the devices that we test in the clinic. And so MyHealth has become my pet project because it's so easy. I don't have to take a person to a room to treat them. I can walk in and treat them. So initially, because my exposure was on body, I did it on body. But then what I've learned over time doing that is that I can tell whether or not a person who maybe has a specific problem, say I could scan them and ask the question, do they have something that I should be using? But if I just walk in the room de novo and I know what I think I know about them, what might be causing the problem, using the physical aspects of the device, I would typically just run through and do on body very briefly anything that I thought might be concordant with their problem. And if it was sticky, I would stay on it until it wasn't quite so sticky, and then I would find that they would get relief with that. Then I realized that I could do that same thing off body and it would last longer. So over time, what I've come to do is, if I'm not really sure what I should use to get the biggest bang for the buck, doing it on body quickly and just surveying through those particular responses that people get, I will find what is most informed, what it is that I should probably spend more time on. And then nowadays, I sometimes will just do on body very quickly, assess what it is I think, because sometimes I think it should be nerve, or I think it should be bone, or it should be joint, and it isn't. And therefore, I get the biggest bang for the buck to do a little bit of on body work, and then the majority of it is just off body. And those are just the simple things where I'm not trying to inquire something specific about the patient. I'm just trying to address the problem. And obviously, early on, the majority of that was about just trying to fix pain. So it was, well, is this a joint pain, or is it pain that's informed by nerve function? Until I had a chance to meet Harry, I didn't really get a lot of those things about the potential or the power, which I now have much better abilities to apply things faster. But in those early days, I was just going, does it look like this person's going to respond to this? And then let's find out what happens. And so once I knew what I would use it off body. And the results, the early message for me was on body works faster, but if it's a chronic problem that you don't expect to fix, but you fix it, that if it's going to come back, it comes back sooner. Whereas off body, if you do it right, it lasts a heck of a lot longer. Including some of my patients having treatments every 2 to 3 weeks for problems that prior to this time, I really didn't have anything that would help them. So I find it, it's still a learning curve for me, but that's been my experience overall.
I want to thank you for that answer, because that's really, really helpful for me as well, and I really appreciate that, because I'm learning as you are to use this device, and it works so well. But I'd like to hear how other people are using it, and that's fabulous.
Thanks. Well, yeah, and that, the other thing that came up is that that's the way I've been teaching people how to use this device. So I have a lot of practitioners who take courses from me for other things or know me through other organizations. And when I show them this device, I haven't had a person who does not want the device, but when I show it to them, that seems to be, they're getting back to me that same feedback is this works incredibly well. It's an easy step-in process to learn how to use it. Once you get hooked on it, then you learn about all of the intricacies of all of the amazing things that you can do besides treating people with pain. So I find it fascinating, but it's a really easy way to get comfortable with what your skills can be.
Great. Well, I'm really happy that you're doing research on this. Just a little side note, because I've only had it for a short time, I was doing research with heart rate variability that measures the autonomic nervous system and how it regulates. And on some of these programs, it's improved in a big way, heart rate variability and autonomic regulation. So I think it's pretty cool.
You're gonna love our research then, because that's one of for the strict research programs that we're using a device we have an IRB protocol for using light treatment with this device, but there's a built-in device that can measure your temperature, it can measure beat-to-beat variability, it can measure pulse pressure waves and things, so measure galvanic skin response, surface EMG. What shocked me is I thought for sure there was something wrong with the device, because I took My Health into it. The guy who has built this software and the technology is completely open to it, because I've treated him now with the My Health and he gets it, so he's totally excited to let us use his computer input to do this. But I have that data recorded, so we hopefully will be able to share some of that later this year, because yeah, at first I thought there must be something wrong with this, because you would turn the device on and literally within seconds the coherence would just completely go to that range that you're trying to achieve. I've never had any other device do that quickly, and so even for the most refractory, haven't had a person, and this is not double-blinded research, so I'm sitting there knowing what's going on with them, but the bottom line is you're right, beat-to-beat variability, coherence just becomes, it's a completely normal thing, including taking people into the room that are in the middle of an acute anxiety attack and running particular cycles that work for that. All of a sudden it's just boom, they're right back and they're looking at you like, what did you just do? It's almost like you gave them a medication that just immediately worked. And beat-to-beat variability is one of those incredibly sensitive technologies that can measure that success.
So thank you very much. I'd like to have Harry share his story for how he and Peter Fraser first stumbled on the human body field. Harry.
Hey Mike, yeah, that was quite a story. I mean, I'm 37 now, and when I was 21, I had chronic fatigue syndrome for about 7 or 8 years, and during that journey of trying absolutely everything upon everything, I sort of suddenly came across this strange idea of creating a health system that people could use from home, but under the guidance of their practitioners, because I'd spent all this time going from practitioner to practitioner, not doing particularly well because I didn't have any energy, and I just thought, wouldn't it be good if there was a way that you could help yourself from home, but still be in touch with the practitioner who would guide you on that healing journey. And it was literally about a month or two later, I was put in touch with this amazing scientist called Peter Fraser, who's from Australia, and I'm from England, who had basically been doing all this research into quantum biology and what he called the map of the human body field over the previous 25 years. And cut a long story short, we ended up meeting. He ended up using his methods on me and ended up healing me over the next 2-3 years while at the same time we developed this health system, and 10 years later, we've been able to miniaturize it and put it in this device called the My Health, and here it is today. I mean, that's where it started.
Well, I'm sorry that you had to go through all that and suffer, but we really are fortunate that the end product was the My Health and the ProVision, because it's just amazing technology, and we want to thank you guys.
Cool, thank you.
And can you introduce us a little bit about the logic behind seeing our answers to health and healing within information science and the human body field? I mean, that's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps I'll give a bit of a description of what the My Health is. I mean, what it is, it's really the first device that can both read the information of the body, but also the energy of the body, and they're two very distinct, separate things. Now, the information, I mean, if you're looking at your overall body and you're looking at overall matter itself always consists of information, structured energy, and that is the same in biology. Everything that's going on in your body also has information behind it as a master control system, and it's always one of the great questions of medicine. What on earth is actually controlling the physiology in the body, and really it's the information, it's the answer. And the My Health is both able to read that information, but also it's able to stimulate a healing response by giving the blueprint of that information back. And then the second part of it is on the energy side, because it's your skin has this amazing magnetic quality where beneath the skin, wherever there's a problem beneath the skin, it shows up on the surface of the skin, and I think Cyril describes it quite well as you get this sticky sensation as the My Health goes over a particular area, and we can measure that magnetic quality of the skin, but not only measure that magnetic quality, you can also influence and again stimulate a healing response back in the body. So so I mean, really, the My Health combines those two sides of looking at things, both the information and the energy of the body, and not only reads it, but also gives a stimulatory healing response too. Catherine, in your role as head of Neuro, perhaps you could tell us what you and your other doctors and trainers have found.
Absolutely. I carry a title of acting CMO, Chief Medical Officer, for a company that was originally designed to identify useful technologies to reduce the cost of healthcare and to improve the outcomes. So we were looking for the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, of things like non-healing wounds or chronic pain or sympathetic dystrophies, or things that would be, these just don't respond to treatment. We spend a lot of money as a culture on them in healthcare, but we never actually do anything other than maybe maintain. And what we'd like to do is identify biophysical or bioenergetic technologies that would help with that. Now, Neura as a company has moved into a different field, but during the 3 years that I served in that position with that assignment, my job was to use technology in our clinic. So we would basically be loaned equipment, and we were loaned lots of different devices and things that I had already used. So I had already practiced microcurrent. I've always used an acuscope and have used electrical acupuncture, and I've used a little bit of light. But I got all of these wonderful devices to try with the idea of asking if they would be appropriate to put into the portfolio that would be Neura. So you would go to a person who said, I want to create a clinic that's ideal. And we originally intended to approach hospitals to say, look, you have a wound care clinic, nothing's helping. Let's bring these devices in, and you will see that the cost of treating these wounds will just diminish, because we'll treat them faster, they'll respond better. And that turns out to be the case, but getting yourself into that kind of institutionalized situation turns out to be a whole lot harder than the person whose mind scope was Neura. And so he's moved on to something different. But as a part of that, and I still maintain that position of acting CMO for Neura, but in the process of doing that initial vision, what we did was assess devices. And so as part of that, I've always worked with a number of different clinicians who were trainers for various devices. Some of them were trainers who were clinicians. Some of them were trainers who worked for specific companies. So they were asking, in the context of whether you use a device or you don't, you also asked, well, how do you train someone how to use that device? So in that line of evidence related to trying to identify how best to train, when I came across the My Health device, my initial push was to allow the people who exposed me to my health to allow these practitioners to have that same experience. And at first I said, this is just too, it was too overwhelming to me at how simple it was and how amazing it was. And I've told people time and time again, I almost didn't believe it. I kept thinking, this must be some glorious placebo effect. But I first treated those people for specific problems, and they, to a person, the first 8 people were just incredible. The responses that they had, they could not believe. And so we sat there saying, well, maybe it's me and this device, but let's get you a device. And so they attended training. 5 of them right off the bat had the device. And we made arrangements to make sure that they had the device without very much input other than a little bit of instruction from me. And their total response was, I can't believe I'm having amazing results so quickly without a whole lot of training. Now, as trainers, they want to be able to explain to another practitioner, because their idea is to teach a class of people and to show them how to get the best results as fast as possible. And to a person, not one of them has said, I don't want to participate in this process, because they've learned how to teach people how to use the device. They have incredible clinical experience. We are gathering clinical data to identify the best way to teach people how to use this device, and we're now progressing into the best way of how to integrate use of the device with the software to optimize the outcomes that clinicians can have as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. And so I can't be more enthusiastic about something in the context of how successful integration of this device has been. Now, we have a way, there are things that we want to improve it, but that's the part of this, is what I love about NES is that we're constantly trying to improve things to make it so that it's user-friendly, it's available to as many people as possible, and it's used in the most appropriate way to get the best outcomes. And I have no doubt that there will be an incredible transition in the ability to use this kind of technology to bring things that were not really deemed possible to people who really felt hopeless or helpless. The things that I've been able to do with this device, I can only imagine what it's going to be like when I can have that person have that device at home and be able to treat themselves without having to get up, drive wherever. For my clinic, they have to fly sometimes to get here. That part for me is just an amazing potential that I can't wait to have that be realized. So I cannot be more excited about a device. And trust me, I have incredible devices in my clinic. The difference between them is the expense, the user-friendliness, the degree of training that's required, and the fact that I can put 2 My Health devices in my bag and go someplace, and I then am able to treat people or loan one to someone and let them experience it. I can't do that with any of the other equipment that I trust and use in my clinic now.
With the My Health, it absolutely produces an electromagnetic signal. Now, on that signal, you can put information, and that's exactly the same as tuning into your radio, and you're listening to the, and you can listen to the music, which is like the information. And when you put a My Health over a particular area of the body, through the electromagnetic side, exactly what you were just saying, it can stimulate neuropeptide response. It'll also stimulate all your nerve fibers, and it'll remind your brain, oh my goodness, there's a problem there, because often the body forgets, that there's a problem there. You can see, it's been hurting for months on end, but for some reason your body hasn't done anything about it and hasn't tried to get it to better. But just by stimulating that area, it reminds your unconscious or your consciousness or your brain to actually go and do something in that area. But then on top of that, when you add that informational component, which actually tells the body how the body is working in that particular area, when it's working perfectly, it does even more incredible things.
The astounding part for me is that, neurologists just get used to the idea that we deal with neurodegenerative disorders, or we deal with episodic disorders, and if we can reduce the frequency of the episode, like a migraine or a seizure or a syncopal attack or something that happens, we're successful. We're managing the symptoms. But to watch the beauty of the function in a situation where I would have said, well, there's no matrix to support this function because these nerves don't work. How is it that you all of a sudden made those nerves work again? And the thing for me, which is, I don't expect you to have an answer for this, but to me the aspect of the task is to figure out how to make those things last longer, how to do that. So I've always looked at the NES system, I've always looked at the My Health as, even as a standalone device, it's an incredible tool to be able to improve mildly chronic things, or even, I mean, the very first person that I treated for pain had foot pain for 13 years and 5 minutes of on-body treatment with chronic balance, and he had no pain, and it's over a year later, and he still has that pain has not come back. That's an incredible thing. And whether it, whatever it is to inform the amazing aspect of that interaction, it just informed me that, oh my word, look at this. And I thought, oh, well, he'll have pain relief for a week, but then he has arthritis, it'll come back, and blah, blah, blah. Never came back. And that's an amazing story. But the idea is that as a neurologist, I kind of just expect things for people who have chronic neurodegenerative disorders. I do everything. I mean, that is my claim to fame. That's my role for IFM, is to do things that are neuroprotective, things that are meant to sort of slow down the inevitable progression of a disorder, and to come to the table not alone with my health or with using Provision, because I have other devices that will make an impact. It's just amazing to me how quickly the device makes that impact, and what my focus is to figure out how to use this system to make that last longer, or to make that be reversible if it's even feasible. And on top of that is supporting the physical, Newtonian, structural stuff that has to come from the body, making sure that the nutrients are there, and trying to ascertain how to support that process. I see the potential for that, because the second aspect of NEST is about scanning someone and looking at the chronic things and trying to reintroduce that healthy signal that they may have had when they were younger, but somehow or other got messed up along the way, and you can work on those things. It's not an immediate, amazing transformation. It's a slow process, but the rewards are still there, and they're still equally as valid. It's just that the amazing stuff comes from the MyHealth device, because it's so fast.